She agreed to be his wife for money, until love made their deal impossible to keep. She had a price. She was not proud of that, but she had learned, in the particular school that life runs for women who have no one left to stand behind, that pride is a luxury and survival is not. And when you're sitting across a lawyer's desk in a borrowed dress with 43 cents in your coat pocket and a daughter who needs medicine by Friday, you do not have a room to be proud. So when the lawyer slid the paper across the desk and told her what the rancher was offering, she looked at the number and she looked at the terms. And she thought about her daughter's cough and the landlord's last notice and the bowl of thin soup she had made last 3 meals, and she picked up the pen. She signed her name. She told herself it was just a transaction. She was wrong about that, but she didn't know it yet, and the knowing of it was going to come slowly, the way the most important things always do, in small moments in quiet spaces, and the particular stillness of a house that is learning, without meaning to, how to become a home. Stay with me tonight. This story is going to take you somewhere slow and warm and true. And if you have ever done something practical when your heart wanted something else entirely, this one is going to find you right where you are. If you love quiet, emotional Western romance stories, like this one, please go ahead and subscribe right now. We bring you a brand new story every single week, and we never want you to miss a single one. And drop a comment below before we go any further. Tell me where you are watching from tonight. Tell me if you have ever made a practical choice that turned into something you never planned for. I read every word. Now let's begin. Her name was Iris Hadley, and she had been a widow for 14 months when the lawyer's letter arrived. Her husband, George, had been a good man in ways that matter quietly and go mostly unnoticed until they are gone. He had not been a wealthy man or an ambitious one. He had worked at the grain mill in Cotter's Bend, Nebraska, and come home at the same time every evening, and been gentle with their daughter, May, who was 4 years old and small for her age, and had her mother's dark eyes and her father's laugh. George had died of a ruptured appendix on a Tuesday morning, before anyone understood what was happening, and Iris had gone from wife to widow, between sunrise and supper time on a day that had begun like any other. After that, things move the way they move when a woman is alone with a child and no income and no family close enough to lean on. Fast in the ways that hurt and slow in the ways that grind. The savings ran out in 4 months. The job, she found that the laundry paid enough to eat on, but not enough to cover the rent and the medicine May needed for the cough that came back every winter and settled into her chest like it had decided to stay. She had sold everything she could sell. She had asked for help once, from George's brother, who had looked at her with the face of a man calculating what she was worth to him, and found the number insufficient. She had not asked twice. She had been managing, in the way that is really just not quite failing, when the lawyer's letter arrived. His name was Mr. Beaumont, and he represented a rancher named Carter Wills, and the letter explained, in careful legal language, that Mr. Wills was in need of a wife for a term of 1 year, for the purpose of satisfying a condition in his late father's will, which stipulated that the ranch, known as the Double W outside of Grover's Flat, Wyoming, could only pass fully to Carter Wills upon his marriage before his 38th birthday, which fell 14 months from the date of the letter, in exchange for 1 year of marriage, for fulfillment of the social requirements of that marriage, meaning appearing as his wife in town and at church, and at any legal proceedings related to the estate, and for the management of the ranch house, and the care of any domestic arrangements. Mr. Wills was prepared to offer a sum that made Iris read the sentence 3 times to be sure she had not misunderstood. She had not misunderstood. At the bottom of the letter, Mr. Beaumont had written, in smaller script, Mr. Wills is aware that this is an unusual arrangement. He wishes to be clear that his expectations are entirely practical. He is not looking for a companion. He is looking for someone willing and discreet. The marriage will be dissolved quietly at the end of the term with no obligation on either side. Iris had sat with that letter for 2 days. Then she had dressed May in her warmest coat and taken her to a neighbor's house and gone to Mr. Beaumont's office. And that was where she was when she picked up the pen. She told herself 3 things on the train to Wyoming. 1, this is a transaction. 2 people exchanging what they have for what they need. Nothing more. 2, she would be honest with May, as honestly as a 4-year-old could understand, which meant saying that they were going to live with a man named Mr. Wills on his ranch for a while, and that it was going to be an adventure, and leaving the rest for later. 3, She would not let herself want anything she had not been offered. She had not been offered friendship or warmth or anything that resembled belonging. She had been offered a number on a page. She would take the number and she would do her job, and she would leave in a year with her daughter and her dignity and enough money to start something real. She believed all three of those things completely. For about 2 weeks, Carter Wills was waiting at the station in Grover's Flat on a gray October morning, and he was not what she had built in her mind on the train, which had been something distant and cold and purely transactional, a man who treated people like line items in a ledger. He was tall, with the weathered look of a man who spent more time outdoors than in, and dark eyes that assessed quickly and revealed little, and a jaw that was set in the permanent way of someone who has made a habit of holding things in. He wore his coat like he'd forgotten it was there. He looked at Iris when she stepped off the train with a directness that was not unkind but was very thorough. Then he looked at May, who was holding Iris's hand and looking up at him with the frank curiosity of a child who has not yet learned to hide what she thinks. Something moved across his face very briefly, gone before she could name it. He picked up Iris's trunk without being asked, said, "The wagon's over here," and walked. She followed. May walked between them and chattered about the train and the color of the sky and a dog she had seen on the platform. And Carter Wills listened to all of it with the same contained expression. And once, just once, when May said something about the dog that was particularly animated, Iris saw the corner of his mouth move. Just slightly. Just enough. The ranch house was large and cold in the way of a house that has been kept rather than lived in. Clean, but without warmth. No curtains that she could see. No rugs on the wood floors. A kitchen that was stocked but bare of anything decorative or chosen. A fireplace in the main room that had clearly been used, but not recently. He showed her the house in the same way he had picked up her trunk. Practical. Efficient. No wasted movement or words. He showed her where May's room would be. He had set up a small bed in it with a quilt, a plain one, folded at the foot, and Iris noticed that the quilt had been folded and refolded, the corners not quite matching, as if someone had done it more than once and not been satisfied. She looked at it for a moment without saying anything. He said from the doorway, "I wasn't sure what she would need." "It's perfect," Iris said. He nodded and went back to the main room. He went over the terms again that evening after May was asleep, practically, clearly, with the same legal precision as a letter. She would manage the house. She would accompany him to church on Sundays and to town when needed. She would be present at any meetings with the estate lawyer, which would occur 3 times over the year. She would have use of the household account for anything the house and May required. At the end of the year, the marriage would be dissolved. She would receive the agreed amount. She was free to go wherever she chose. He said all of this without looking at her the way a person looks at another person when they are speaking. He looked at the table, or at the window, or at his hands. She said, "I understand the terms. I agreed to them." He looked at her then, briefly. "I want to be clear," he said, "that I don't expect this to be difficult for you. I'm not a demanding person. I am mostly outdoors. You'll have the house to yourselves the better part of most days." "That's fine," she said. "And the child," he said, and stopped. She waited. "She can have the run of the place," he said. "I don't mind noise. I just wanted you to know she doesn't need to be kept quiet on my account." Iris looked at him for a moment. "Thank you," she said. "That's kind." He shook his head slightly, like kindness was not the word he would have chosen, and pushed back on the table and went to check on the fire. She watched him go and told herself very firmly that she had noted a kindness and that was all, that noticing it did not mean anything beyond the noting. May fell in love with the ranch in the immediate and total way that children fall into things they recognize as good. The barn, with its horses and its smell and its vast, dusty warmth. The kitchen garden, mostly asleep for winter, but still possessed of a few stubborn cabbages that she treated as personal friends. The porch, which caught the afternoon sun, and which she appointed as her headquarters for all activities requiring good light, which had aged for was most activities. Carter Wills she approached the way she approached everything, with complete confidence that she would be welcome. He had no idea what to do with that. Iris watched it with a quiet, private interest. He would come in from outside and find May on the porch or at the kitchen table, and he would stop in the way of a man who has not had to account for a small person in his path, and May would say something direct and unanswerable like, "Do horses like being brushed?" Or, "Why is the sky bigger here than in Nebraska?" And he would answer her, seriously, fully, as though her questions deserved real answers, which they did, and which most adults forgot. One afternoon, Iris came in from the kitchen garden to find them both in the barn. May was sitting on a hay bale, watching Carter check the hoof of a bay mare, and she was talking continuously in the way she did when she was comfortable, and he was answering the spaces she left, and the whole scene had the look of something that had been going on comfortably for a while. Iris stood in the barn door for a moment. She told herself she was just checking on May. She told herself the warmth she felt looking at the two of them was just the barn and not anything else. She went back to the garden. The first Sunday they went to church together in Grover's Flat, Iris wore her good dress, the dark blue one she had kept even when she was selling everything else, because some things you keep. Carter drove the wagon. May sat between them and sang something tuneless in content. In town, the looks were assessments. The way small towns always look at something new, at the new wife of the man who had kept to himself for so long that his private life had become something people try to fill in from the outside. A woman named Frances Cole introduced herself after the service with the warmth of a person who has made the decision to like you and is simply waiting for confirmation. She had a broad face and an open manner, and she looked at Iris with a curiosity that was entirely friendly. "He's a good man," she said, tilting her head toward Carter, who was speaking with the pastor across the churchyard. "Kept too much to himself since his father passed. I'm glad he found someone." Iris smiled in the way she had practiced. The wife's smile, the settled smile, the smile of a woman who has not recently been deciding between rent and medicine. "Thank you," she said. Frances leaned in slightly. "He doesn't say much, but he means everything he does say. You'll learn that." Iris thought about the quilt folded and refolded on May's bed, the corners not quite matching. "I think I'm beginning to," she said. The estate lawyer came in November for the first of the 3 meetings. His name was Mr. Hadlow, a thin, careful man who looked at Iris with the eyes of someone paid to determine authenticity. And she sat beside Carter at the long table in the ranch's main room and answered his questions plainly and felt Carter's steadiness beside her like something she'd lean on if she needed to, which she told herself she did not. After Hadlow left, Carter said, "You did well." She looked at him. "He's not an easy man to convince," Carter said. "He was my father's lawyer for 30 years. He knew every version of every scheme a person might run on this estate." "I wasn't running a scheme," she said. "I know," he said. "That's why it worked." She turned back to the dishes she had been washing. "Carter," she said. "Yes." "Why didn't you just find someone who wanted to marry you?" she said. "For real. You're not an unreasonable man. You have land. You have a house. There must have been women in town who would have." There was a pause. "There were," he said. She waited. "I didn't want to take something from someone under false pretenses," he said. "A woman who married me thinking it was real, when I was only doing it to satisfy a legal condition. That seemed worse than this. At least with this, both people know exactly what they agreed to." She thought about that for a long time, standing at the sink with her hands in the water. "That's a careful way to think about it," she said. "I try to be careful," he said. "I don't always manage it." She didn't ask what he meant by that, but she thought about it later. December came in cold and clear, with skies that went on forever and nights that felt close and contained the way of winter nights when the fire is going and there is nowhere to be. May's cough came back, as it always did, and Iris sat up with her 3 nights running with warm compresses and the medicine she now had enough money to actually buy. And on the 3rd night, she came out of May's room at 2 a.m. to find Carter in the kitchen with a pot of something on the stove. She stopped in the doorway. "It's just honey and water and some ginger," he said, not turning around. "My mother used to make it. I don't know if it works. It might not work." She sat down at the kitchen table. He poured 2 cups and brought them over and sat across from her, and they sat in the quiet of the middle of the night and drank the honey water that might not work, and May coughed once more and then was quiet. He said, "Is she all right?" "She does this every winter," Iris said. "She always comes through. She's tougher than she looks." "She's tougher than she looks," he agreed, And the way he said it was the way you say something about someone you've been paying attention to. She wrapped her hands around the cup. Carter, she said. Yes. The quilt in her room, she said. You folded it yourself. He was quiet. You kept refolding it, she said. The corners weren't matching. You were trying to get it right. A long pause. I didn't know how children like things, he said finally. I wasn't sure what looked welcoming. She looked at him across the kitchen table at 2 a.m. with the fire low and the winter pressing into the windows and the honey water cooling in her hands. She said very quietly, You are not what I expected. He looked at her. What did you expect? He said. Someone easier to keep at a distance, she said. He was quiet for a long moment. Iris, he said. She looked at her cup. I need to tell you something, he said. And I need to tell you plainly because I don't do things any other way. She waited. When I set up this arrangement, he said, I was certain I was doing the sensible thing, the clean thing. No confusion, no pretense. 2 people with clear agreement. He turned his cup in his hands. I didn't account for the possibility that I might be wrong about what I wanted. The fire popped. Outside, the wind moved across the flat land the way it always did, steady and wide. I'm not asking you to change anything, he said. The terms are the terms. You agreed to them and I agreed to them, and I'm not a man who goes back on what he's agreed to. But I want you to know that the year we set out to have is not the year I'm actually having. She looked at him. What year are you having? She said. He looked at the table, then at her. One I didn't expect, he said. One I don't want to end in the way I planned for it to end. The kitchen was very quiet. Iris looked at her hands. She thought about the pen she had picked up in the lawyer's office, the number on the page, the 3 things she had told herself on the train. She thought about how precisely none of those 3 things had survived contact with a man who folded and refolded a child's quilt in the dark, trying to get the corners right. Carter, she said. Yes. I need you to understand something, she said. I did not come here for this. I came here for a number on a page because my daughter needed medicine, and I had nothing left to give her. I know, he said. I am not a romantic person, she said. I am a practical person. I have always been a practical person. I know that too, he said. And practical people, she said, and stopped. He waited. Practical people, she said again, sometimes arrive at a conclusion they didn't set out to find and have to decide what to do about it. He was very still. What conclusion? He said. She looked him across the table. This man who meant everything he said and said very little, who had answered her daughter's questions like they mattered, and made honey water in the middle of the night, and folded a quilt until the corners were right. That the deal, she said, is impossible to keep. Something in his face changed, slowly, like a door opening on a room that had been closed a long time. For both of us, he said. Not a question. For both of us, she said. The fire settled. The winter went on outside. May slept and did not cough again that night. They sat in the kitchen until the sky began to go pale in the east, not saying much, because they were both people who understood that some things have been said completely and don't need adding to, and because there was something in the kitchen at that hour that neither of them wanted to disturb. When the light came in full, they heard May's feet on the floor in the bedroom, the small, certain footsteps of a child who wakes up without doubt and moves toward the day without hesitation. She appeared in the kitchen doorway in her nightgown with her hair loose, and she looked at both of them at the table with her dark eyes and said, Is there breakfast? Carter looked at Iris. Iris almost smiled. There's breakfast. May climbed into the chair beside Carter with the ease of a child who has decided someone belongs to her, and Carter poured her a small cup of warm water with honey because the pot was still on the stove, and she watched him do it with great interest and said, Is that what you made in the night? I could smell it. Yes, he said. Did it help? She said. I think so, he said. She nodded with great seriousness. My mama stayed up with me. I know, he said. She did. May looked at him, then at her mother, then back at him, with the look of a child who is noticing something and filing it in the place where she keeps important things. Are you going to stay? She said to him, meaning it the way children mean things. Simply, exactly. Carter looked at Iris. Iris looked at Carter. Yes, he said, if you'll have me. May accepted this without ceremony and reached for the honey water. The lawyer came back in January for the second meeting, and in March of the third, and on the occasion of the third, he looked at Iris and at May, who had fallen asleep in the chair in the corner during the legal portion of proceedings, and at Carter, who had his hand resting on the table close to Iris's in a way that is not quite touching, but is also not quite not, and he made a note in his file, and said nothing about it. On the way home in the wagon, with May asleep between them, Carter said, "Hadlow won't contest it." Iris said, "I know." He said, "The ranch is clear." She said, "I know that too." The wagon moved through the spring light, which was a long golden kind that comes late in Wyoming, and makes everything look like it has been waiting for it. "Iris," he said. "Yes." "I'd like to make this permanent," he said. "Not the arrangement, not the terms." He was looking at the road. The rest of it. She let herself sit with that for a moment. She thought about 43 cents and a borrowed dress and a number on a page and the 3 things she had told herself on the train that had not survived a single winter on this ranch. She thought about May asleep between them with her head tipped toward Carter's arm. She thought about honey water in the middle of the night and a quilt folded until the corners were right. "The rest of it," she said. "Yes," he said. "All right," she said. He looked at her then. Something in his face that was not quite a smile, but was as close as Carter Wills got in the middle of the road in the light of an April afternoon. He reached over May's sleeping head and covered Iris's hand with his. She turned her hand over and held on. The road went on ahead of them wide and open in the spring light, and the ranch was waiting at the end of it. And it was hers now, not by terms or by transaction, but by choice, the real kind, the kind you make when you know exactly what you are choosing, and you choose it anyway. Not because you have to, but because you cannot imagine choosing anything else. She had come here with a price and a plan, and 3 things she had told herself on a train. She left all of that somewhere in the first Wyoming winter, in a kitchen at 2 a.m, in the folded corners of a child's quilt, in the quiet of a man who meant everything he said. She had made a deal. The deal had made her a home. And she was never, not for a single day of the rest of her life, going to call that anything other than exactly what it was. The best thing she had ever signed her name to. If this story reached you tonight, I want to hear from you in the comments below. Tell me which moment stayed with you the longest. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me if you have ever made a practical decision that turned into something your heart could not have planned for. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do it right now, because we have so many more stories waiting for you. Stories about quiet love and second chances, and the kind of belonging that finds you when you have stopped looking for it. We will see you in the next one.